Welcome back to the Reboot Era podcast. Today's episode is special. This is the final guest of season 1. I still have one more episode to wrap up this season, but this one closes out our guest conversations in a very big way. Before we kick off today's episode, I wanted to share something that really worked for me. I've been using jobhire.ai in my own job search, and within a couple of weeks, I had 5 interviews lined up and 2 offers on the table. I may have even accepted one of those offers, but more on that later. What I love is that they're so confident in the process that if you don't land an interview in 15 days, you get your money back. And throughout September 2025, I've partnered with them to give you 30% off with my code DRAY30, DRAY30. So if you're in the middle of your own reboot, this is worth checking out. I am joined by Lilian, a first-generation American and DEI leader who's brought her expertise to UC San Diego, UC Santa Cruz, Google, and most recently, CrowdStrike. A quick note before we begin. This is a sensitive subject. Conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion can stir up very strong feelings. We're not here to fight or debate. We're here to share our experiences, perspectives, and hopefully spark more inclusive thinking. In this episode, we break down what DEI really means, explore the challenges around pay equity, talk through the hidden work of ERGs, and dig into why top-down buy-in is critical for change. So let's jump in.
Hi, my name is Lilian Argueta. I was born and bred here in Los Angeles. I am first-generation American. My family immigrated from Guatemala. It's a beautiful little country south of Mexico. A lot of people misconstrue it with Guadalajara, which is in Mexico. Very different. But my background, so I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert. I have been in this business for about 12 years now. Long before it was essentially popular. It became popularized in 2020 with Well Reason, and we can get into that later. But essentially, my background is actually in human development. I graduated from UC San Diego, so shout out to all of our Triton family out there. And companies I've worked for. So I actually worked in the UC system. I worked at UC San Diego. I've worked at UC Santa Cruz. I've worked for tech giants like Google, and I've worked for cybersecurity companies like CrowdStrike.
Well, thank you, Lilian, for being on the podcast today. And I'm so excited about the conversation that I hope we're going to have. But that accent, I loved that. You went from an American accent to this Spanish, Latin American accent so quickly. And I think you're our first real, not only DEI representation, right? Because I've had some other people of different backgrounds, but someone who's focused on DEI on this podcast. So I'm excited. With that, we obviously were part of the same riff. We should probably say that.
Yes.
We didn't know each other. I mean, maybe you were like, hey, Dre was the 1%. I've seen his name.
You know what? I think I did.
You were like, yay, +1 for diversity. But I did not have a chance to meet you while we were working there. And it's been such an honor to be in the group chat that we're part of and see the things you, have said that are not breaking your NDA, but give me a good laugh at night.
I love our chat. It's definitely brought us some good laughs and some good solace, to say the least.
Yeah, there's power in going through something with a group of people who get it and are going through the same thing with you. Before we talk about where this conversation probably will go around DEI, I wanted to know, how are you doing? How is the search going? How is the time off?
It's neither here nor there. In the very beginning, I think similar to a lot of people, well, no, I'm not going to generalize. This is my first riff ever. And there is privilege in that, right? I think to have been working professionally full-time for about a little over a decade and to have been laid off for the first time was a very eye-opening experience. There were a lot of insecurities that rose up to the surface and a lot of processing with my therapist. But I think now in this current state, I have definitely understood that it absolutely had nothing to do with me. I think we can very well look at today's political landscape and know that there has been quite a lot happening in the DE&I landscape, and it is no surprise that my role was definitely affected. But that being said, where I'm at today, I mean, I am over 70 applications in. I have only had four phone screens, only of which two have actually gone to the hiring manager. So it's been a little bit of a ego teardown, but I haven't lost hope. So I'm in an okay place to answer your question.
Okay. Well, it's better than not being in a good space at all. At least there's some hope. And ideally, you continue to land opportunities or at least interviews so you can keep up to par with your interview skills. With that, the positions you're applying to, are they specific in the DE&I space?
That's a great question. In the beginning, you know what? I was like, fuck that. I'm not going to do DEI anymore. Even though this has been my specialty for a very long time, I know that there is no hope. Look where we're at. And I was applying for things within HR. I mean, DEI has always been, for the most part, in HR. So I was looking at HR program management, HR special projects, employee experience, employee engagement, and those kinds of roles. And I wasn't really getting any hits. I was also looking into HR business partner roles. And all of a sudden, I was like, you know what? Let's see if there are any D&I roles out there. I mean, I know there are companies that are still doing the thing, they're still walking the walk. And that's when calls started to come back and a little bit of a fire was ignited. And then I'm like, okay, so there are companies that are still doing D&I work. And so the shift happened and I started to then refocus on my expertise. And so I'm back to just focusing on DE&I specific roles such as ERG management, DE&I like specializations such as like strategy work, director of, associate director, senior manager type of positions.
Well, hopefully you find something. I wanted to share something with you that we have a slight overlap in our career. While I was at Amazon, because I was like a person of color, of course, they were like, hey, do you want to do this DEI thing? And I was like, I don't want to speak for the whole, community. I want to, I want to just do my job quietly. Why is that a problem? But I rose to the challenge and joined this little group of white people. And I was like, hey, let's make a difference. And it was great to hear so many different people's perspectives and like what they wanted from our company culture and our team culture and the funding we had to be able to make that a thing or try. And it was really fun. Loved it, but it was really tough on top of my full-time job. So I'm glad there's people out there like yourself that are doing this full-time. And the question that I have for you is, why do you think people don't care?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think there are several reasons, but the first one that comes to mind is people are unaware of what it means, right? What does diversity, what does equity, what does inclusion, what does belonging mean? There is a blanket notion out there that it means giving a certain group of people an upper hand. And so they're like, well, I've worked my ass off. Why am I going to give, Juan and Malcolm over here an upper hand if I've been working, And the thing is, that's not what it means. And I think for that reason, a lot of people have been like, I don't want to invest my dollars in these kinds of initiatives. There's just a lot of unwilling ignorance around this kind of work. There's also a lot of wanting to appease the current environment that we're in. There's a lot of shifting around, right? You're wanting to ensure that you're not losing business. And so people are wanting to cut back on programs and they're not wanting to do the work anymore because they don't want to lose their customers. So it really depends the environment that you're in. But I think at the end of the day, it just really comes down to like understanding what DEI means to begin with.
Yeah. So then can you answer that question for us, whether this is your perspective or your actual expertise working in this area? What does it mean? And maybe answering it for like companies and people who might be a little ignorant or naive.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, if we're breaking it down between the three words, right? Diversity just means difference. It's the presence of difference in a given setting. So in a workplace, this refers to like the difference in identities, lived experience across race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, ability, religion, education level, veteran status, citizenship, socioeconomic status, and more. And so for a company, if you have multi-generational, multi-ethnic staff, you're likely going to have, a very diverse workplace. Now, when it comes to equity, this involves acknowledging systemic inequalities and ensuring fair access and resources and opportunities based on individuals' unique needs. When it comes to equity, it really requires evaluating the different resources and opportunities based on individuals, right? And so, an example, promotion, right? This process includes, in an ideal world, it would include having diverse panel interviews, clear and transparent criteria, or it could also mean having like mentorship programs for folks that maybe didn't have these kinds of opportunities in their process of getting to that job to begin with. And it could also mean having, different systems in place for folks that maybe had different educational opportunities getting into that job. Now, inclusion is about creating a culture where all individuals feel respected, accepted, and being able to contribute fully. It's not just about being invited to the table. It's about being heard, valued, and supported. In a lot of places, right, you can be included in the conversation, but if you're not putting the proper, equitable processes in place, let's say we have a company that's focused on hiring women, right? Yay, we have a lot of women at this company. But if all these women aren't getting paid the same amount as their counterparts, you're not having an equitable process, right? And so that's where DEI comes into play. And there could be a myriad of reasons as to why this is happening. It could be unconscious bias coming into play. It could be misogyny. There could be a variety of other things. But essentially, these are the three anchors of DE&I.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that will ideally clear it up, or at least level set the rest of this conversation that we have today. And the number one question that I think anybody out there is going to want to know, because we're going to talk about maybe a more personal or specific situation that we've gone through. But before we do that, what the hell? Why aren't people getting paid equally? Why? Seriously, I'm just wondering why my peer, who may be a white male with less years of education, less experience, has worked at worse companies and hasn't added value, is getting paid $20,000, $40,000 more base than I'm getting paid. And we're in the same, geographic location. So both in Seattle, let's say. I don't know if you can answer point blank, but what are some of the things that you see that the reasons why people say, yeah, that's okay. Let's do it.
Honestly, that's a really great question. There are different people that specialize in different avenues of DE&I or just pay equity in general. This is not my specialty. I can have opinions, and part of my opinions include I think this is where unconscious bias comes into play, or it could be conscious bias, right? People don't have the proper training tools in place. They could be maybe someone above them has a personal relationship with your counterpart. They've known them for a longer time. It could be favoritism. It could be something as simple as that. Or it could be, hey, this person went to so-and-so college. I know that they can do this job well because of said background. These little things start to add up and play into bias, right? Again, this is my opinion. I don't know for certain, but I have seen and witnessed this in action. I'm not saying at any company specifically, but it's the unfortunate reality when it comes to pay equity, and it happens more often than you think, unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel like it happens just as often as I think, because I think it happens all the time. And why isn't there a tool in the world that's you've gone through this interview process every step of the way? We're evaluating you and giving you a number. And what doesn't play into it is the color of your skin and your background and your last name. What does play into it is you nailed that interview. You hit the 5 key points. You have shown and established that you can do the job we are asking you to do. So when you get hired and that pay band is, 50,000 spread across, you got the higher end because you explained and demonstrated that you can do that thing. Does that not exist? Does that exist and we just don't use it?
That's a really great question. Oh my goodness. I'm going to refer you to one of our old colleagues that actually was part of our RIF. And she might be able to explain this even better. But honestly, I don't think this exists. This is where AI should actually play a part to be able to remove the human aspect. I do think this is still very much a human process. And the downfall about having a human aspect when it comes to pay grade is that implicit bias still very much plays a part. Because when you're talking to recruiters, when you're talking to a hiring manager and their uppers and your colleagues, they very much tell you, even through the recruiting process, the pay scale is very much dependent on your experience, how well you do on the interview, X, Y, Z. And it's like, when you're talking about these key aspects, and this is where the DEI lens comes into play, right? Not everybody is a good test taker. Not everybody is a good interviewer, but that doesn't mean that they can't do the job very well, right? Some people are amazing speakers. Some people are shy as hell. But when it comes to doing the work, they can be amazing and even better than maybe that someone that presents really well on screen or on a mic, etc. And just because they present well doesn't mean that they should get paid more, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is where I think that comes into play and where that pay scale starts to teeter probably in not the best directions.
Yeah. Well, I definitely love networking. So if you could connect me to that person, I would love to have a podcast conversation or an offline conversation, because it's something that I have always wondered and haven't given enough time to. And now that I'm unemployed, I've had nothing but ideas about how we could genuinely make this entire thing better. But I have questions that I need to speak with experts before I, can brainstorm up in a solution, an idea that will work potentially. So, you'll hear from me more.
Absolutely.
For the podcast, we digress because we had to have a little side convo about some tea that we can't share publicly, and I'm so sorry. It was juicy, and maybe I can somehow share it in a post someday, one day. But talking about our DEI and what kind of happened and what went on, would you mind if I share a little bit about our group chat and a conversation that kind of just went down and a question that was asked?
Yeah, please.
So in our group chat, I have a bunch of us that have we have our frustrations and we talk about it and we support each other. And a question that came up, knowing that Lilian was going to be on this podcast, was essentially, if you could reflect on your time and you're looking back at being at our company, what is your favorite thing about not being there anymore? And I won't read it exactly, but your answer was roughly, not having to justify people's rights day in and day out, and a little notion toward you're not going to miss the blatant ignorance around essentially DEI and the leadership we worked at. This isn't for just this one company. This is probably a lot of different companies. So whether you know where we work or not, this is a perception. This is not speaking poorly of any one person. Could you add more light to that? What is it? What did you see? What did you every day cry about?
So there are a variety of different things. When it comes to, let's focus specifically on employee resource groups, because throughout my career, that has been the biggest program that I have run. We're always dealing with a variety of different identities. And when it comes to people's identities, that is something that's very intricate, right? You're thinking about someone's culture. You're thinking about someone's race and ethnicity, and you have to really balance that very delicately, especially in a workplace. You're celebrating people's identities at any given time throughout the year. Think Women's History Month, think Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, AAPI month, Asian Pacific Islander month, so on and so forth. The list goes on. And when you are celebrating these different culture observances or celebrations throughout the year, you have to play a very delicate dance with leadership when it comes to messaging, especially at a global scale. And what I mean by that is typically at a company, you'll have a month that's happening. And the way that a cultural campaign happens, let's take Black History Month, for example, because this is the group that tends to get the most, how can I put it very lightly? They get the short end of the stick, and it's very problematic for me because this is the group that I try to fight for the hardest. And more specifically, at one of my last companies, it's during a time of the year where there are a lot of other things happening, and the company prioritizes things that bring in the money, right? Which, in fairness, it's a business. They have to prioritize the things that make the money, and everything else is more of an added bonus. And so for me, being that this is my role, right? This is my career, I'm going to focus on what's my task, right? And so when we're going through a cultural campaign, there are comms that have to go out for that specific month. In this case, it's February. But what folks don't realize is prior to February, we're talking 6 months before that, there is a full scale roadmap that happens, which includes, okay, we're having swag design, which I know I mentioned in the text message is one of the points of frustration, but it is. You're having a lot of weigh-in, not just from your key stakeholders. So in an ERG, you tend to have leadership. At the previous company, we had 5 to 6 leaders, and this group was one of my favorite groups. I love them. Shout out to that group. I miss them. We have our own group chat, but we weigh in, we have our designs, but then we have to work with the actual marketing team who has to actually approve designs, because whatever swag we're creating, if you're thinking about it, if it's a wearable, people are wearing it out in the open, right? And if it has a company's name associated with it, the company has to okay it, right? So there is this whole thing that's happening on that back end. Now, we're also thinking through, are there any socials that are happening? Then you have to work with the socials team to ensure that you have socials approvals and the social design. And social doesn't necessarily mean the design team. There's a different design team who has to design any graphic images, any graphic assets. That also includes, see where I'm going with this? That also includes any internal website designs, any banners, any key images, etc. That also has to coincide with whatever you're doing for the swag. So that way it looks like a full scale campaign.
Don't get me wrong, all of these things from a business perspective, I get it, right? This is running a project. I understand the importance of making sure everyone's aligned, but it just feels like overkill for a damn sweatshirt.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And even for our ERGs, they don't understand that all this work is happening on the back end. But this is what has to happen because it needs to be approved by the company. At the end of the day, it's the company's image. And so they even do that. A company, when they're doing that for their own thing, let's say our previous company, they had their own swag store. They had to do the same thing for each one of their swag pieces. They actually sold their stuff, and so they made money off of it. Sometimes the ERGs would be able to put stuff in the swag store, and so that was its own thing. But I'm sharing all of this to say that there is so much work that goes on in the back end. Not to even mention, there's comms that are also happening in the back end. And the comms is something that I actually created on the back end that I then would have to send to our comms team, because the comms team doesn't create it for us. They just edit, approve, and then send it back to me. I then have to then send it to the executive sponsor, and then the executive team, they have to okay it. And then we have to make sure that we go through the right funnels, the right processes for them to then send it out on the day that we need them to send it out. All this to say, we just want them to say, hey, we're celebrating this because we believe in our communities. In this instance, we believe in our African American and we believe in our Black communities. We want to celebrate them and their contributions to society, because this is the most minimal thing that a company can freaking do, right?
And that takes 8 months to get approved.
And the email takes all of 2 seconds to send, all to make our community members, our Black community members and employees feel like, hey, they actually care. Cool. Okay. They go on with their day. But it's something so simple to say, hey, you know what? My chief HR sent this out. Or our CEO sent this out. They actually care. Cool. Oh, and I get swag. Oh, cool. And on top of this, during those 6 months, right, there are other programs and events that are happening. They're planning like Jeopardy. They're planning, we're going to do a volunteer event at XYZ offices. During this time, because there are so many other things going on, it has happened time and time again where because other priorities are being shifted, they're like, hey, so we're not going to be able to send out this email. Why? Because XYZ is happening. It's just an email. Just send it.
Yeah.
Just send it. So what if there are other emails going out? Like we've seen multiple emails go out in a day.
So the pushback is around, hey, we have other priorities and this isn't one of them. So because of that, we can't do it? Or is it like we have 5 things going out and we don't want to send 5, we want to send 4. So yours is cut.
It's kind of a mixture of both.
And who's making that decision? Not by name, but like what level is that being like, this is where we're deciding no or yes?
So that is where I never really got a clear answer. At first, I used to think it was the head of communications. At some point, that person was let go, but the issue was still happening. We got further, so then I'm like, okay, so it wasn't that person. So maybe it's the head of the head, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, I'm catching it. For anyone who isn't catching it, it starts with a C.
And I think that's where it came from.
You know, I've heard a lot of perception discussion that that individual is very influenced by what I think they want to be, the person, the CEO they want to be, right, is like looked at. Google, right? Amazon, what are they doing? Did they lay people off? Let's lay people off. Did they do anything for this month? Let's not. Let's do it. Like, let me follow suit, you know, of the people who I value, which can be tough in a situation. Like, if you believe in it, if you value your people, just do it, right? If it's the COO making the decision, do it. If it's the CFO, do it. Like, this is not to call any one individual person out, but I've heard that these people like value another company's C-suite or executive team and go, what are they doing? Let's do that thing too. It's sad.
And it's interesting that you say that because that's the kind of like pushback that not pushback, but like kind of question that I used to get from leadership. It's like, okay, well, what are our competitors doing? Or what are other leaders doing in this space? And I'm like, I used to work for the largest tech giant in the world. And they used to do this. They used to do it for every group. And they used to do it every month and some.
But why is it what other companies are like? If I care about my car being washed, why does it bother me if my neighbor's car is washed?
That's a great question.
The house next to me is burning, it's on fire, why would I call the fire department and say, can you come put the fire out in my house that's not existent? Like, who cares?
You see, for me, what I think, I have my suspicions. I think for a lot of companies, and for certain companies, wink, wink, I'm winking my eye here, they want to fly under the radar. So if they see a multitude doing certain things, they want to do certain things too so that they can be with them. So that way they're not standing out, they're not flying below. And to kind of go into one of the questions that I know was part of our chat group, which has to do with our diversity numbers and annual report, it's the same thing.
Right.
Which is interesting because there are a lot of companies out there, Google being one of them, in which they do share diversity annual reports or their annual reports in which they do share numbers of their workforce. You have tech giants, you have gaming giants, which do share their work staff percentages. And there are certain companies, wink, wink, that don't. And the ones that don't, I think for the same reason, they just want to fly under the radar. And sometimes, is it a good thing? Or is it a bad thing? Who knows? They haven't been pushed for it externally. So I think that's part of the reason maybe they haven't. I was very low on the totem pole. Look, I didn't really hold any power there. I had access to the numbers. They weren't bad. I mean, were they great? No, by no means. But when you're looking at the industry average and the market average, we were kind of in line with it.
The average needs to be better than.
The average needs to be way better. oh my gosh, but this is where DEI comes into play. Like, if we were able to put in the right programs and systemic processes in place, little by little, things would get better. But the thing is, they need to start way earlier on, not just at the company level. Once people are already working full time, they need to start much earlier than that.
So does the change come that we need to see, want to see, people who are passionate about this and want to go like fight this battle, right? Die on this hill or make a change? Does it come from the top down? Does it come from, hey, I'm a manager who's hiring someone and I'm going to make a difference on my team of 5 people?
I think, this is a tricky question because I feel like it needs to come from both ends.
Do you think one end can influence the other ends more? Like, sure, a leader, a C-suite individual could say this is something we're going to be passionate about. Does that stop? Does that actually enforce that everyone will go and do equitable, inclusive hiring? Or is it like you have leaders dispersed throughout more lower levels who care about those things and push for it? And ultimately, it solves the problem. Yes, leadership doesn't care about it, but when you look at the numbers, we have a very good representation of a bunch of different groups.
I think if you really do have, I think top down, I really do. And if you have a small enough company, because once you have a very established large company, it does become a little trickier. It's not to say that it can't happen. But if you do have let's say a series of C-suite leaders who are very much invested, they are going to hire the right people to do the right work. And that's going to have a trickle effect, right? So if you have, let's say, a CEO who's very much invested in this work, they're going to hire a CHRO who's going to hire the right people to be able to trickle down the same work thereon and thereforth, right? And I think that's what's missing in a lot of companies, that it's really not coming from the top down. Yeah, to be very honest, I think top down is where it really needs to go, because if you do have a lot of companies in which it's coming from middle management, which does make its change, trust me, it does, because there are companies like at our previous company, we had amazing hiring managers. Think of like the one that starts with J in our chat group, phenomenal. Like, shout out to,
Love
I'm
her.
going to call her out. Like, she's amazing. She hired on the right people. She empowered the people on her team. But if you do not have the right environment, right, to empower those people past that level, where are they going to go? If the pay equity isn't there, how are they going to grow? If you don't have the right professional development opportunities, where are they going to go, right? And so that's why I think you have to have it from the top down.
Yeah. Well, our org, first, I guess I should say, we love Jen. We can say her name. Who cares? Like, she'll be happy. She'll be smiling at home in between our interviews. But in our org, which got completely shattered, one day I just got really frustrated because I was looking at this breakup of who was part of what types of groups, right? And I don't mean like ERGs. I mean, who's white, who's not white, who's male, who's not male. And I was just seeing things like, we're not doing a lot of hiring of people who aren't white. We're not doing a lot of promoting of people who are not white. Those who are seemed to be part of groups that they were favorited and they were kind of in the in crowd. Those who were amazing at their jobs but fell into anything that was a minority group were shunned. And one day I noticed people who are getting pipped and let go were never part of the majority group. So in our team there must have been like 175, 200 people total in this group. I took an afternoon and I went through every single person, and I went through and created a spreadsheet with their perceived race, their perceived gender. So obviously there were some, inaccuracies, but for the most part I was accurate. And I wrote it down, and then I broke it up by each leader. So I think we had a leadership team of like 7 people. And for each one, I created like a calculation that would show me, you have 100% white women working for you. You have 100% white men. And then the larger teams that had like, 25 people, you'd be like, oh, you have 90% white individuals. And you can do the math. It's like 3 people are not white. And when you start calculating all that in a group of 200 people, it literally came out to like, there was 1 full Black person. I was half. There was, I think the biggest was Indian, was like the breakdown. And of Indian, it was like 3% of the entire number. And then when you looked at the pips that happened in this group, obviously 100% came from the smallest group of people. And I couldn't go to my leader because my leader, who no longer works there, was the driving problem. And I will say that to the day I die. I wasn't going to die on that hill. I liked my job. I liked some of my coworkers. So I went to one of my leader's peers who also reported into the same VP. And I said, "You're not white. You want to help me solve this?" And he was like, "I had no idea it was this bad." I went to HR. I asked them if they could run the numbers for my team. And they said, "Sorry, your team's not big enough. You have to have a larger team for us to be, to do this. We could do it for the 200 of you as a whole." Because when you averaged out the 200%, it looked like 20% total were non-white. So you hit that statistic. You hit the, hey, we're targeting 20% non-white. Cool. But if you got into each individual team, it was like 5 out of the 7 teams had no minorities on the team. And then it was just so sad. And when that person left, hiring froze and then, rift. So, but I mean, like, are those things not being asked at companies? Like, are those things not being done? Or are they being done and we're just not sharing it because, I don't know, maybe there's shame in the numbers?
I think it really depends the level of importance that they're being put onto. Are they being done? Yes. Because there are certain government reports in which these numbers have to be reported. We actually have a team, not here at this one company, every company has a team, a compliance team in which they are responsible for individual compliance reporting. Sometimes it is nationwide, sometimes it is state by state, sometimes it's country specific, in which we are required to share these numbers. And so is it being done? Yes. This is why there are these questions asked, sometimes through self-ID reporting, right? We'll be given these surveys in which we are encouraged to share self-ID. And I don't know if you were there the first time at our previous company in which we were encouraging people to share self-ID. The thing is, it's a voluntary thing. We can't force people to share this information. Sometimes it's shared actually during the candidacy stage when you're applying for a job. You might see voluntary ID information. This info is actually not shared with recruiters. It's not something that is going to affect an application in any way. So let's demystify that for folks that are listening and have no idea why they're being asked this information.
It's strictly compliance.
It's strictly compliance because governments want to know, okay, how many people are applying for a job? What's their background? Simply because they want to know these numbers.
They're not doing anything about that, but that's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole different conversation. Oh my gosh. At our previous company, shout out, we literally had, I don't know if they finally hired, but we had one person who was in charge of that one for the entire company. Oh my gosh. Before the RIF, she had begged for my help because I was the only one who was legally able to assist.
But how do you look at it, see a number, and then go, here you go, government. We're not going to do anything about this, but there you go.
Well, so there are things that we should be doing, can be doing. It's up to the company. And here's the kicker. So this is actually, we can share this. It's completely okay. So for folks who are already working at a company and do not share this information, this is why it's so important to share this. Depending which platform your company uses, let's say your company uses Workday. If you do not update your information on Workday, let's say veteran status, race, gender, etc., your compliance person is going to do that for you. What does this mean? They're going to look at your photo and guess based on your photo. Sounds terrible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but this is what they have to result to if you don't do it, which is why it's so important for...
But why can't they require it then? Why can't they say, for compliance reasons, you have to do it once?
That's something that I'm not well versed in, and I really wish I could. I can probably do a quick search on it. I think it should be mandated. There are reasons why we can. I think maybe there's something similar to HIPAA guidelines. I don't know. But
But I feel like it's because they would openly be discriminating. Like they're like, hey, we know we discriminate against you. And because you filled this out when we made you fill it out and then we targeted you, we're basically backing ourselves into a lawsuit because otherwise it could be mandated. Like there's no reason. They mandate that I have to show up to the office.
Yeah. I mean, that could very well be it.
It just feels like a cover your ass type of thing.
It could very well be it. So like that's the one area where I'm like, I don't know why exactly. But what I do know is because it isn't mandated yet, it's still somewhat mandated from a reporting standpoint. They then put your compliance person in a very awkward position in which they have to then guess race, gender based off of your work profile photo.
So fill out those profiles because it's a compliance thing. Don't do it because you're
Yes.
giving the company anything that they're actually going to use to help you.
Exactly.
Unless you're Google, maybe. I don't want to talk bad about all companies, but like it can be better. Companies, if you hear this, make it better, please. If you want to make America great again, that can be the way.
No, it's so true. And I think they are, and this is more just like of a side tangent, especially for a lot of white presenting Latina people like myself. I know you can't see my face, and under this light, I probably look much more pale than I am, but I pretty white presenting. I by no means tick off white in race. And for a lot of folks, we don't have a race. When you're checking off, we have our own little section that says Hispanic or Latino, and then they force you to pick a race. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I've seen that. Yeah, because I'm like 2 or more, and most applications or whatever have the 2 or more option, or I don't have 2 or more, and then there's a separate one that's like, but are you Hispanic? And it's like, why did you ask me that first and then break down every race but not include Hispanic?
Well, because Hispanic is more of, it is an ethnicity, which is, it's a whole different convoluted process. Hispanic
I feel like they're just trying to ask me if I'm legal.
Hispanic just means it's like, were you colonized by the Spanish? Do you speak Spanish? Is essentially what they're asking.
Is your name not Smith? Your last name not Smith? Is it something else that's Mexican, Latin American, something?
It's very different. Well, fun fact. So the difference between Latine, I use Latine because, to be inclusive, not everybody is of the binary.
Mm-hmm.
Latina, Latino, Latine. The difference between that and Hispanic is that not everyone who is Latine is Hispanic. And the key difference there, Hispanic is essentially that you speak Spanish. And if you look at Central America, South America, and even part of North America, right, because Mexico falls into North America, you have a ton of indigenous cultures. And then you have Brazil. They don't speak Spanish, right? They might, but they are not of Spanish origin. So they are not
Latine,
Hispanic.
but they're not Hispanic.
They might not even be Latina. They could be indigenous.
Oh, okay.
By nature. So me, for example, I am both Latina, indigenous, Hispanic. So when it, just to kind of go back to that, ticking off the form, when I am forced to pick a race, it's really interesting because there will be some boxes that allow you to pick native or indigenous because they'll say indigenous to Central America, South America, etc. And for companies that do that, I'm like, bless, thank you for acknowledging. But then you'll have some companies that say indigenous, Native American, not Hispanic, Latino. And I'm like, okay, what happened to my people?
At this point, just put white or not white. Like, that's what they want to know. Let's just do it. Let's just give the people what they want. Do it this way.
At that point, I'm just like, I do not wish to share.
Last question for you. It's very easy. People who hear this resonate with your story, the things that you've shared. Are you open to them connecting with you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Yeah, please.
For companies who hear this, take her. She's amazing. She's the change we need in the world. So thank you for sharing all the things that you shared on this podcast today. And I hope people resonate with it. It will probably take me a hot minute to edit this because there's things I'm going to have to take out. But that was lovely. I loved every part of this conversation.
Oh, thank you. I feel like I didn't even get into the meat of the work that I do. I went on so many tangents.
That wraps up my conversation with Lilian, and with it, the final guest episode of Season 1 here on the Reboot Era podcast. If you're job searching, don't spin your wheels like I did early on. JobHire.ai gave me the tools to land 5 interviews and 2 offers, and I may or may not have accepted one, but we'll get to that on a future episode. What's even better is their guarantee. If you don't land an interview in 15 days, you get your money back. And right now, throughout the month of September 2025, you can get 30% off with the code DRAY30, DRAY30. Head over to jobhire.ai, plug it in, and start making moves towards your next role. I know DEI can be a sensitive subject. My hope is that by sharing perspectives like Lilian's, we can spark curiosity, empathy, and maybe even some change, without turning it into a fight. Stay tuned as I'll be back with one more solo episode to close out season 1, and then I'll head into season 2 with the new energy, new stories, and new ideas, starting January 2026. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a colleague or a leader who could benefit from the conversation. And if you're a company looking for a DEI leader who actually knows how to do the work, connect with Lilian on LinkedIn. Her link's in the show notes. Thanks for listening, thanks for supporting season 1, and get ready, the reboot era has only just begun.